Welcome to the November 1st Eclipse OpenJ9 community call. Um, if you're a new attendee or a regular attendee, please add your name to the list of people who's attending, just so we have some idea of who's regularly attending the call. Then I'll pause. If there's something you want to add to the agenda, now would be a good time to tag it in either into the relevant section or the any other business section at the end. We don't have a lightning talk scheduled for this week, but if you have one you want to give, reach out to me and we'll get it scheduled. All right, that brings us to the point where we look at the recent end user issues. Pull that list up. Looks like there's been a couple that have come in since the last call. Discussion around performance issues with JLink custom runtimes. Looks like that's been assigned out. Discussion around exceptions from JDK 11 that don't appear in 8.
Yeah, it's unclear, but it seems to me like this is going to be a fix in OpenJDK, and OpenJ9 wouldn't have to do anything. So this is just in monitoring state. We'll just look at it later when see if OpenJDK makes any updates to their bug.
And then the rest of these are older, so they would have been discussed in previous calls. Is there anything here that needs some discussion today? All right, then we'll jump back to the agenda. And the 035 release, it looks like we've completed the OpenJ9 builds for this. Is there anything else left here from an OpenJ9 perspective?
Some late, so we didn't publish everything related to AArch64 Mac coming out of early access. So I was waiting for Semru to accept that platform as coming out of early access, and then we'll publish those last few things to the docs.
Okay, so this is waiting on a couple of doc updates, and then we can remove it from the AArch64 doc updates. All right, that brings us to the 036 release, which we're branching for at the end of this month. I think we should probably split the discussion of this into two pieces and talk about the 8, 11, and 17 piece, and then handle the Java 19 piece separately. Makes sense. I see we have 74 issues in this release plan. And Pete, you typically split them that way that the 19 ones are handled separately, correct? Have you done that with this release plan as well?
So there are some 19 things for 19 in 036, but I think they're going to get moved out. So what was happening was we were putting things in the Java 19 milestone for what needed to be resolved for the Java 19 GA, and then we're putting everything else in 036, but it turns out those two things are the same. So I think Toby's going to move a bunch of stuff out.
Makes sense. Hopefully we'll see this number go down then. But is there anything in this list that we're concerned about having complete for that November 25th branch date?
I would say a lot of it. We need to really whittle this down.
Yeah, looks like we're still carrying over some of those.
Yeah, there's things that we've been carrying forward that we need to move to a different milestone or move to the backlog. We need to figure out, what we can address in this list and what has to move forward. There is only there's one blocker for a crash in some tests that seem to be a regression. And then there's the test blocker that we've been carrying forward for a few releases that by the way, still occurs quite often in the builds.
Daryl, on that one that we've been carrying forward, the OSRG testing, have you had a chance to make any further progress on that?
Not recently. It is something that would have to swap back into my head, move that one forward. I had a setup on one of our machines here that was able to reproduce it reasonably reliably. I'll have to see if that's still there and can do so.
Yeah, I think it would be good if we can get this resolved now and just get the plague of failures out of the builds. For the other blocker, is somebody working on that already? Get it back in the list here.
If that's the one I assigned to Devin the other day.
Yeah.
I haven't got an update from him today on that. I'll have to find out from him where he's had an opportunity to look at that.
To get this resolved as well. And I guess given the point in the release cycle that we're at, if each of the area leads can take a look at what's in this list and see what needs to be moved out and what can't be completed, that would be good. Of course, is always to close things out, but given the size of this list, it seems unlikely.
And please consider moving some of the stuff to the backlog, because we're never going to get this whole list completed. And I hate moving things forward, release after release after release.
And for some of them, if we're never going to resolve it, it might be worth just closing.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Just close as never going to get to it and move on. Take a look at it again if it gets re-raised for some other reason.
Isn't that what we have deep backlog for?
Realistically, we have these extra deep backlogs and other but once items go in there, it's rare that they get looked at. So it would be a more honest approach for us to say, won't fix and move on. In terms of Java 19 then, Jack, do you want to give an update on where we're at with the Loom side of things?
Yes, Dan. So right now, I am currently working on triaging through the remaining failures in Sanity and Extended OpenJDK. I have opened the PR to re-enable most of the ones that we have confirmed are fixed, and grinder runs have been passing. There's one remaining issue where there was a invalid JIT return address. I've been doing some triaging on that, and looks like the error comes from a GC stack walk when JIT requested the new memory, which wasn't able to be allocated. The particular thread which this happened on is on a carrier thread after a yield was successfully completed and returning back to the carrier. When I was looking at the stack, I see that the 4 frames on top are being JIT inline, and as soon as they exited the inline JIT frame, it was a invalid JIT return address being thrown when GC was trying to walk the remaining stack. I wasn't able to get any particular detail on what the PC address actually points to. It seems to be some random value as a stack and doesn't have particular meaning. So I will be asking JIT team and GC teams to help with the investigation on this part. Other than that, there has been a issue that is intermittent related to class unloading, where we're seeing weak references not being cleaned. I've asked Lynn to take a look at this particular case, and he's currently working on it to see what is causing the GC to treat the particular reference as being still live. Babney have been working on triaging some of the extended OpenJDK failures due to serviceability, which is the new suite we've added. And some of them we already determined it's legacy errors that we just never run. And part of them are related to Loom, which is looking into either fixing or excluding. For now, all of those particular test cases have been excluded from the nightly build. And I guess it's Alec on the call for the GC work.
Yes, hi. What's here to add? As far as the GC policy is covered, everything is ready except a little bit, some corner case for metronome hasn't been covered with some double barrier test case, scenario, which we probably know what to do. However, we don't have any test case to kind of exercise this very corner scenario, so it might take a while, before we fix it. But the focus actually is not on that. It's more on another thing that we kind of neglected all along. It's a scenario where we have a kind of a race condition, I would maybe call it, between I guess the thread being mounted and GC wanting to concurrently end that thread, so whichever, either it's already mounted, and then we concurrently want to walk it, which is probably unsafe to walk, or the other way around, we already started to scan it and somebody wants to mount it, either way, they should kind of serialize this. So we've been discussing that last week, how to do it. We might need some input or help with VM team as well. It's not just pure GC problem. It sort of resembles to, let's say, thread inspection in a way, one of those scenarios. Anyway, that might be a reason why we have some ongoing defects, or failures. But anyway, that's our focus, and once we understand this and then we fix these things, then we'll go back to metronome. But concurrent scavenger is fully covered. That should be enabled in testing if we can enable it. Biggest moments for testing it. But metronome is the only one a little bit lagging.
With the state of where this is all at, the testing, the GC work, do we see being able to complete all this before the November 25th branch date, which is about 3 weeks, just over 3 weeks?
So currently, from the VM side and I guess from testing perspective, we only have about 2 or 3 known failures that we're triaging, and everything else we have been able to correctly run. So from the current look, as long as we were able to fix this 2-3 failures, we should be fine for the November date.
There are a lot more open items tagged against Loom than 3 or 4 failures. So are there a lot of items that we can just close on?
Some of them can be moved out. I know there are a few tagged against Loom as DDR related. Those are not part of the functional release. They're more for the debugging tools. There's also particular ones in Loom where they have all been experiencing the same failure. It's all due to either one of the JIT invalid addresses. And those are sort of, once we got one fix, we can close like 3-4 PRs at the same time.
Okay, so you believe these 3 or 4 issues are sufficient to close out the remaining set of things that are still lurking, that are open in this plan?
Yeah, it should close out most of the things. There are a few that we most likely will be moving out.
Are those things that are functional requirements to implement Loom?
Uh, they're not necessarily functional requirements. Some of them are related to the JVMTI work, which is a new test suite that we've never enabled. And we're not fully sure if the test is even related to Loom yet, since some of them have not been fully triaged.
I can give an update on that one. So some of the tests are specific to the RISE implementation, which we won't be supporting unless we want to match our implementation with the RISE. And others are related to the JVMTI extension APIs, which are not documented in the specification. So for the current release, we don't need to support them either. So it's going to be something in the future. If we want to support those extension APIs, we can. But I don't think so. It's mandatory for us to support them at this point. And they will. So those two categories will be moved out from the Java 19's current release. Back to you, Jack. Yeah.
Okay, so those are things that don't apply or things that are extensions. And
Yep.
the rest of that test suite we believe is passing and working?
The rest of the test serviceability JVMTI test suite also includes failures which you will see in 8, 11, and 17. So those are regressions which have been happening for a long time, which we didn't notice because we never ran that test suite. And they won't be part of the Project Loom release cycle. They will need to be fixed separately in the future. We can probably, we'll have to see, we'll have to prioritize which one affects the users most and then fix them as needed.
Okay. So I've heard and I'll be a little unfair in how I characterize this, an increasing list of this failures, this fails, that fails, oh yeah, and here's another set of things that fail. Do you believe that you can make the November 25th date?
Currently, yes.
Okay. It's great to hear. It'll be good to get our Loom implementation out the door then. Cheng,
Hi.
how is the Panama work coming?
I think there's no code changes there, and we currently investigating the JTrack test failures. So I think already identified there are issues, and a couple of issues out there related to the sound generator code. One of them I'm still working on about the small page size sync allocation. So I'll probably moved forward to check the stuff on the ARC64 this week. Yeah, that's about it.
So, do you believe you can make that November 25th date?
From my side, Vim side, so I think there's no problem, but it depends on how long it takes to fix the issues in the secondary code on G side.
Daryl, is there somebody lined up to help investigate that and move that forward?
So, Cheng, you're referring to the issue you opened last night?
Yeah, that's about X6 for Windows.
Right. Are there any other issues?
There's another one on the Z. I think it's already signed up to Docker to investigate.
Okay, so the Windows one hasn't been looked at all yet. So
probably
I
there.
can't comment on that one at all.
Yeah, probably there still one or two issues on the ARC64. I've still not yet take a look at. I need to try it.
Okay, so there are failures on AR64 then that you just haven't triaged.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, we have to look at those problems, right? I mean, hard to say.
I see two of these here. I believe when I had looked at this list earlier, there were a few other foreign function API things as well. I like this one here. The library lookup test.
Looks like the random interfering failures. We still not yet determine what is going on there.
And you believe you can get those resolved in the next 3 weeks?
We never seen it before. I never seen it after. So looks like we cannot reproduce it so far. So
okay, so it might be good to take a pass through this plan, and if anything is unreproducible, to close it at this point.
Okay.
We can reopen something if it occurs again.
Sure.
So that'll give us a more accurate view of where we are with this release. Is there anything else we want to touch on for the release section here?
The tests that are excluded, we still have tests that are excluded that need to be unexcluded?
Yeah, I believe Jack has a PR with a bunch of tests that are ready to be unexcluded.
Well, they're probably not ready to be unexcluded. We're waiting for something like GC support?
Nope. I've marked the PR as ready for review. We're just waiting for a review to take place and have it merged.
Okay, but is there anything else that is still excluded, or is this complete?
Yeah, there is still, I think, 3-4 excluded. Those ones are the ones that Dan have mentioned in terms of needing some fix from due to one of them is the GC class unloading. We need to determine whether it should be a permanent exclude or we need to fix it. And the others are related to the invalid JIT return address, which I'm still triaging.
And that's it? We just have 3 or 4 tests?
Yes, that's as far as from the list of failures we've been excluding related to Loom. Those are all the ones remaining. There's also a bunch that I've excluded in extended sanity with the JVM-TI serviceability ones, which that needed triaging and working through the list.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds pretty good.
Move on. Is there someone from Adopt who wants to give an update? Skip to the infrastructure. Adam, is there an update here?
Hey, keeping an eye on the UNB artifactory usage because the cleanup is broken there, so need to follow up on that. Windows rebuild still in progress. Investigating that. I think for the Z-Linux replacements, we still have the Red Hat 8 issue. We have one of our AMACs that we're sharing with Omar, and it was having some issues last week or two. So it seems to be working now after we cleaned some stuff up and made some adjustments. So we're keeping an eye on it. But we'd like to have this vetted before we roll out to all the machines. So we have one AMAC being shared and 2 Z-Linux being shared. So those particular ones we want to keep a close eye on both farms.
Yeah, we do have a problem on Z-Linux where our builds keep getting killed.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that's necessarily on the shared machines. I noticed there was a JIT server issue running PR testing where the build was killed.
Because it's actually the underlying whatever command is running then gets killed, right?
Right. Usually it's creating Java doc.
Yeah, it was Red Hat 7, 3, and 4 that were the shared ones. Yeah, well, follow up and keep an eye on.
might be a different problem where we just don't have enough resources on the Linux machines to always run builds. The network does seem to be a bit flakier on Linux than for other machines.
Yeah. And these are also a new cloud, which is under resources at the moment, so. I'll have to talk to Joe about it again.
Thanks, Adam. Marius, is there an update on JIT server? See Marius on the call, so skip that for now. See, the next microJIT meeting is set for November 3rd. Toby, is there an update on CRIU support?
So we'll be branching today for the next EA build. The major changes are some key store processing performance improvements, and then there are fixes to time compensation in single thread mode, as well as support for timed wait APIs like unsafe park, thread sleep, object wait. Those are the main improvements that are in this EA.
You said single-threaded. Something I missed. Sorry.
Yes, time compensation calculation in single thread mode. We were not compensating for the JVM hooks that were running in single thread mode. So if they ran long, then our calculations were a bit off. Actually, the one other thing is the malloc trim change is in as well, and the explicit checkpoint GC changes are in as well. With respect to CRIU, I think the plan moving forward is to drop the dependency on libcriu for build machines. So we will, instead of using static references to the library, we'll just do dynamic loading and do dynamic symbol lookup. This means that we'll be able to build on cent6, cent7. It won't matter if CRU is installed in the build machine. However, for running CRU tests, we will need CRU on the test machine, which I believe is fine. Most of the test machines are have the newer kernel levels, so we shouldn't have any issues there. We have a requirement from our internal projects to release on JDK 8 and 17. 17 is prioritized, but there's expectation that this will eventually land on JDK 8. So we're going to go through the exercise of backporting some of the changes that we withheld from JDK 8 to the JDK 8 stream. And so that'll take place sometime in the next month. After we are done with 0.36, we're going to start doing tests to see if we can turn this on in headstream. So there's going to be a requirement that we'll have all the test machines capable to run CRU tests before we can do that.
Toby, to enable this on 8, how many additional changes are we talking?
So there's an issue with a list of changes. So let's say in the order of 5 or 6.
Can you link that here?
Yeah.
Because I continue to have changes, or continue to have concerns about adding new major features to 8. We should probably talk about this and take a look
Yeah.
at what the risk actually is to it.
So I guess in terms of the motivation for this, I believe that the rationale is that even though 8 is the oldest JDK level we support, it still has quite a long lifetime associated with it. Most likely it'll be supported beyond JDK 11. And so for that reason, there's still a lot of interest in having this feature on JDK 8.
I believe the dates that have been shared publicly are 2024. So we're only talking a couple of years here, right? Like,
for JDK 8?
yes.
I can't recall which specific dates. I know whether it's the IBM dates or the OpenJ9 dates, but I recall seeing something around 2026 or 2027. Peter probably recalls the dates better. Is Peter still here?
I'm still here, but entirely paying attention. Dates for what?
JDK 8 support.
For
Semaru.
Yeah, what about it?
Do you know what the end of support is?
Not exactly, no.
Okay. Anyways, I can also post that there. I'm not sure it's relevant to OpenJ9, but that would be the motivation for.
I'd expect Semaru to keep building JDK8 as long as the OpenJDK8 project is still providing updates.
What I was going to say was I thought we had tied ourselves to the support dates from Adopt OpenJDK, or I guess Adoptium now.
Well, those are the initial targets. But I think the language might be at least 2024 or at least 2025, whatever the dates are, because we don't really know what the OpenJDK project is going to do. So if OpenJDK extends further, Semaru probably will as well.
Yes, and I have the 11 and 8 dates backwards. Well, 8 says at least 2026. So I still think we should have a bit, maybe a focused discussion on this in one of our next meetings about the risk that we're taking on. Whether this is actually worth the risk that we're exposing the project to. I am cognizant that we're over time and I'm starting to see people drop. So Daryl mentioned that he's not available to provide, or there's no update on the Mac M1 work. So unless there's something critical today, I think we'd probably time to call this. We can pick the conversation up next week. So, all right. Thank you, everybody, and we'll stop the meeting here.
Thanks, Dan.